Recording?
Recording has begun.
Thank you. Good evening. I'd like to officially call this meeting to order. We will go in roll call. Councilman Goldsmith.
Here.
Councilman Trollinger.
Present.
Councilwoman Bryant Ward.
Present.
Councilman Jenkins.
Here.
Mayor James is here. Would you all please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. So the first item on our agenda is click it or ticket. We have a proclamation for this, and I will read our proclamation. Whereas the safety and security of the citizens of the town of La Plata and surrounding areas are vitally important, and whereas a large percentage of our citizens regularly drive or ride in motor vehicles on our roadways, and whereas 1 in 5 motorists, or 19% nationally, still fail to regularly wear their seatbelts while driving or riding in a motor vehicle. And whereas regular seatbelt use is the single most effective way to protect people and to reduce fatalities and motor vehicle crashes, and is supported by the laws of the state of Maryland, and whereas May 16th to June 5th, 2022 has been named the National Click It or Ticket Law Enforcement Mobilization Period. And whereas across the country, law enforcement officers will actively be participating in the mobilization to ensure all motor vehicle occupants are buckled up day and night, and to reduce the risk of injury and death caused in traffic crashes. And whereas increased enforcement of seat belt laws coupled with publicity has proven to be an effective method to increase seat belt use rates and decrease fatal crashes. Now, therefore, we, the Council of the Town of La Plata, do recognize the period of May 16th to June 5th, 2022 as Click It or Ticket, and urge all citizens to always wear seatbelts when driving or riding on our roadways. And it is signed by me, Mayor Janine James, Councilman Goldsmith, Councilman Trollinger, Councilwoman Bryant Ward, and Councilman Jenkins. So Chief, do you want to add anything to this? How you may be recognizing this 2 weeks?
Usage in Southern Maryland, that's another one. More likely so I just try we have work, and as you read it, see to the number save people's lives when they are.
Thank you. And everyone, let's try to buckle those seatbelts and stay safe down here. All right, next on our agenda is our Superintendent of Charles County School Board, Dr. Navarro. Come on down. It is good to see you.
Thank you.
All right, so you have a presentation for us. Yeah, oh, it's a very light touch. Yes, there you go. You're
Thank
better
you.
than I am on that. All right, and I think we have, yeah, so it's all yours.
Thank you so much, council members, Mayor James. It's a pleasure to finally be here and have an opportunity to see you all in action. I have actually logged into some of your meetings to just listen to what's happening in the town of La Plata, and very much appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about our school system strategic plan. I have a couple of slides and I will be quick and happy to answer any questions. So if we can go to the next slide, please. One of the things we conducted this year, as I was coming into my first year as superintendent of Charles County Public Schools, I spent really the fall semester, if you will, going out to the community as much as we could, also going virtually and speaking with staff, parents, talking to students about what do different communities think about their school systems. I also spoke to elected officials, community, longstanding community members, what they would like to see in Charles County Public Schools moving forward, and then what they really like about their schools and their school communities. And we came together as a senior leadership team, brought members of our principals and our union leadership together and came up with a strategic plan. And a strategic plan is very, very focused on what are we going to do in the next 5 years as a school system? Where are we heading? And what you see in front of you is the strategic priority areas that we identified. I want to spend just a few minutes going through each one of them. Really should not be a shocker. If we are an institution of learning, this is what we should be focused on at all times. But let me unpack the 3 areas. So if we could click. There you go. One of the things I want to start is by highlighting the reality of the impact on the pandemic on student learning. What you have in front of you is a slide. I could have taken grade 1, grade 9, grade 10. You will see a similar pattern. In the school system, we started using a diagnostic assessment that we are giving to students in grades 1 through 8th, some 9th graders as well, in both reading and mathematics called iReady. And I'm hoping that if parents are listening to this meeting today, the light bulb goes off and they're like, oh yes, I know about iReady because we send reports home. iReady is taken 3 times a year, is an assessment that is an adaptive assessment. What that means is basically as you take a question and you answer a question, the test will adapt to try to figure out exactly where you are in your skill knowledge. If you look at the chart at the beginning of 5th grade for mathematics, about 10% of the students in Charles County were on grade level expectations for where they should be in a typical year in mathematics in the beginning of the school year. That is not usually what we see. And we had 90% of students that were not there. The good news with this chart, if there's any, is that if you look at our winter scores, we almost doubled that number. So as students came back to in-person learning with a lot of supports and a lot of also additional needs that we had not seen before, what we see is that young people progress with a lot of support from their teachers and their principals and other school staff. I expect the spring scores to look even better, but it is a stark comparison of where we were. So we've lost a lot of ground. If you can click one more time, please. We had gaps before as a school system. So the last time we have statewide assessment data, Charles County for 5th grade in mathematics was performing at about 33% of its students meeting the 5th grade standards at the end of 5th grade. So we've lost ground, but we weren't very high anyways. And the state also has a problem with mathematics. So basically our gaps have widened a little bit, a lot more than before. And the honing in on student learning and achievement is much more important now than ever. So in student learning and achievement, we're going to focus on a couple of things. First and foremost, we are spending a lot of time going back to core instructional learning of the adults and using standard level materials so that every student has access to standard grade level rigorous curriculum. And that's just going to start feeling like the expectations are getting higher. I think the expectations is that we are really at that grade level expectation for all students. We're also going to be investing a lot more time and resources to build the capacity of teachers to be able to better support students. And we are expanding opportunities, and you'll hear, hopefully you've heard, we are having a much more robust, even more so than last summer. This summer's summer program is a lot more robust. We're frankly providing transportation to make it equitable for students to be able to access our summer programs. And we are targeting a lot more students during the summer. And we're bringing enrichment into our summer program so it doesn't feel like it's drill and kill kind of thing. The second piece around student learning that I want to say is that we're going to continue to come to the public and talk about our progress. Like you saw those iReady charts. They're difficult to swallow when you look at the gaps of who's performing at which point. But we know we're going to make progress because we're spending a lot of time focusing and providing supports to students. And we want to be very public about our progress moving forward, where it's happening in every single school and at every single grade level. We can click. The second area is talking about access and opportunities. And you hear and you see there say no measure of progress can be made if we don't address the barriers that impact student learning and achievement. And one of the things that if you go to the website, you can see all of the slides for this presentation. But one of the things we talked about is first and foremost, starting in pre-K. And I want to just bring up the importance of pre-K because this is also a small business option that a lot of private providers provide besides the school system. And in the blueprint for Maryland's future, there's a huge push for pre-K. We are also doing some major investment in early childhood education. And the blueprint also requires that not just the school system provides slots for any eligible student that is 4, and they have different tiers of socioeconomic levels to provide those, but that there is private providers. And one of the things I invite the viewing community is that I am very interested, and we have started talking to the private providers that are in the county, throughout the county, in the city, in the town of La Plata and other places, because we have a lot of students and we need to build this. And I think this is a workforce development infrastructure thing, a small business way to think about this need that is very much coming, as well as an educational need to provide to students. So we're going to work with the private sector, the small business sector, to try to expand seats throughout, not just in the school system, but throughout. The second thing in terms of access and opportunity is the programming that we are building in our schools. We expect to identify a school or perhaps a set of schools in the next couple of years that will be a two-way immersion school where students will learn content in 2 languages. Obviously, one of them is English. We're trying to figure out what the second one will be, probably Spanish. And so students will start at an elementary program and they will eventually become biliterate. The second thing that we're doing that we're going to work on programmatically in the middle schools is that we're going to start moving some of the high school courses into the middle school years. Things like mathematics, things like world languages, courses that begin CTE, career technical education pathways, will be available in the middle schools because not every student is ready for it, but a lot of students are, and they can do that. And starting those credits early that count for high school graduation means that their high school schedules become more open for them to have different options at the high school. And that's extremely important because the thing we're going to do in high school is that we are starting to have move more students into AP classes, move more students to complete, not just take CTE courses, but complete certifications, industry certifications, so that they are ready and they start at a more competitive level in the workforce, as well as providing early college programs for students so that students graduate with both an associate's degree and a high school diploma at the same time. So there's an importance for that high school, because high school is all about the credits and finishing the credits. There's an importance for high school students to have more flexibility in their schedules. And there are many that can start taking high school electives and other classes. We'll also hear from parents from the middle schools, Summers and others, about the fact that we are going to be working to increase the number of students who are ready to take Algebra 1 by 8th grade. It is fine if a student needs to take Algebra 1 in 9th grade, but right now in the school system, we have 34% of students taking Algebra by 8th grade. It doesn't have to be 100, but 34% is too low. So There are many more students, and there have been many more students in other places that have done it. There's nothing different in Charles County. There's nothing different in the town of La Plata. I've talked to families and said, I think of students, including my own, as little oranges, and we're going to squeeze the potential out of them. So we're going to increase, and we're going to work around building the capacity to increase that, and do so in an equitable manner about how we think about providing those access and opportunity points. And then finally, click. Next slide, please. We're going to work on culture and climate. This was a difficult year as educators to handle the unfortunate social experiment that we did on our youth by keeping them at home and away from these social structures at a time where their brains are developing to be social creatures. They learn from each other, and we kept them at home for almost 2 years. And so bringing them back in person was extremely difficult, it was exhausting, but it was extremely necessary for the healing and the support that we had to do for our students this year and into next year. So we're going to we're going to continue to work on culture and climate so that students feel like they belong in that school, they belong in those rigorous courses, they can do well, and they also get all the additional behavioral, mental wellness supports that they need to do that work well. The other thing that we're going to work in this area is the pandemic, unfortunately, weakened our community connections. Retirees that used to walk through our doors and read to our students, have wonderful relationships with our students. That has gone down. Our PTOs and PTSOs, their numbers have dwindled a little bit. So we are going back out to the community, talking about how amazing our students are and trying to get community back to our schools, because it's extremely important that they're part of the overall well-rounded education that we provide students. So I believe with that, I have used up more than my official time, and I very much appreciate, the other slides are there. I welcome anybody to look at our website. The full presentation is there, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. I will open it up for the council if you have any questions. Councilman Goldsmith?
You talk about these things, particularly college credit and such, which is very ambitious. I applaud that. How do you handle staffing? Do you have enough staffing to do those kind of things? Because I have 4 or 5 students in one class. Or how do you get your full load?
To do the early college program? So what we are doing is we signed an agreement. It's the first cohort starts next year. And we have an agreement with CSM, and the students go to the campus in La Plata and take classes there. And so the classes are taught by CSM faculty, and they count both for the high school graduation and the associates towards their associate's degrees. Yep.
Save money to the parents.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I'm trying to make that statement. I wanted 150 kids. I think we're less than that. It's my first year, but I am selling it to middle schools. I did Pico-Waxon. I'm probably going to go to Summers and start selling it to middle school parents, so they just do the math.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Vaughn. Matt Trombley, Ward. I appreciate your presentation. I'm curious as to why 5th grade was used as the data point achievement scores. Is it done for every class throughout the Charles County Public School system?
Yes, you didn't want 12 slides, so I just picked up 5. And also I'll say mathematics had the biggest, also nationally, we lost the most ground in 5th grade as a nation. We lost ground in reading too, but math was very stark, and I needed to just show a slide. But you could pick 8th grade, you could pick 2nd grade, 3rd grade. The gaps are there.
So is the data available to parents if they want to deeper on your whole state of high school, trying to compare where they are?
Yeah, good question. So we have the full deck of iReady data. This is the first year that we've instituted a diagnostic that goes up to 8th grade and then some 9th graders. We are going to grow it potentially into 10th grade. And then that diagnostic ends because juniors and seniors are kind of done with the school system. They're now focused on work and higher ed. And so their indicators are more AP exams, CTE completer. So their indicators change a little bit. And by then we should have students that are on a high school level for reading and mathematics. So we kind of end that diagnostic there. But the one thing you don't see here, because I was trying to be short in time, is one of the things that we have committed to the Board of Education is developing those dashboards so that you can go into your school and the iReady assessment, for example, if you're a second grade parent, will follow your child all the way up to 8th, 9th, and potentially 10th grade. So you can see the progress of your own child, and you can also see the progress of your school through the upcoming years.
Thank you. So not yet, maybe as far as the full picture. And so potentially soon will be a dashboard. That's good. My follow-up on that, which I just bring to one you said, is how are our schools in Playa doing compared to the county as a whole? Because I know, as the town of Playa, we have any control over schools, but one of the things that you brought up, which is not in a vacuum, right? There's a lot of residents come up to me and say, look, our schools are not the way they were when our kids were there before the pandemic. A lot of behavioral issues going on, and teachers feel very overwhelmed at times. And I know it's a lot to juggle and handle, but as far as how is our schools in Playa doing as far as the readiness goes? What was the West?
I'm happy to provide sort of an overview, and you probably would want the spring results so you can get a sense of what that looks like. The elementary schools have gaps. Everybody has gaps in terms of scores. I think there is less of a gap and a loss in the elementary schools in the town of La Plata. In the middle school, I think Summers is sort of in the middle, a little bit upper middle of how we look at all the middle schools in terms of their loss. They're progressing very well. I will say Mitchell and Matula are progressing very well in terms of catching up and making up those gaps. It is incredible to see how fast students are making some gains. So I am happy to provide you the iReady reports. And then when we have these dashboards, because remember, this is the first year that we actually have a diagnostic assessment, and also just as a point of reference, the state has no assessment that will provide parents. So it was extremely important that we bring in this diagnostic assessment, because this assessment will guide us probably in the next 2 years until the state brings back and we have results of the state assessments. And as we build these dashboards, families can go in and take a look at specifically about their schools. The other thing you mentioned is the behaviors. It is very much what I mentioned as well. It's been a very difficult year, and I think every school has seen severe behaviors, but just immature behaviors for the age group that they usually service.
Thank you very much.
Councilwoman Bryant Ward, did you have anything? Okay. Councilman Jenkins? You mentioned the gap, and as an educator myself, but on the college level, and I teach online, so I didn't see that. Are you retaining any of the children? I know there's the extreme cases, but when you see a majority of the children that are supposed to be 5th grade level, and they may still be operating on a 4th grade level because of the pandemic, how do you handle that? Because the further they get behind, the harder it is to make sure that they're on level nationwide. So
Yeah.
how do you handle that?
So the one thing that I've said to staff, because there's a lot of anxiety with this, is this is not a makeup that we're going to do in 1 year, because it takes time. And it depends where the students are in their continuum. So at the elementary level, one of the things that we have instituted this year is a lot of tutoring, one-on-one, well, actually through K through 12, a lot of additional tutoring and a lot of additional extra time for students academically. One of those big pieces is going to be felt yet again this summer, where we quadruple the number of students that we're providing summer programs for. So there's a lot of investment of sort of saying, summer without doing anything academic is going to be cut a little short, because we have all these different programs, and we're negotiating with families to make sure they come in. And so students have been affected differently. At the secondary level, where the name of the game is how many credits are you earning towards graduation, we've actually almost quadrupled the number of students that we retain on a normal year. I was looking at that data carefully. So we are thinking about how do we offer, and we are this summer, for example, offering original credit for classes that we typically don't do that. We're also paying for them. And that's something that may not stick around until the funds sort of dry up. But for right now, we're paying for it. We're providing transportation. We're trying to create environments where we take away all the barriers of why families wouldn't take classes normally during the summer. Sometimes it's because of the cost, or I can't get my kid there, I'm still working. So we're trying to remove those barriers because we know kids need a lot of time to sort of catch up. And then the other thing we're thinking about, is now we've learned how to take a class in the evenings, or how to take a class outside of a certain point in time. So we're going to be a little bit creative with our scheduling of the opportunities that students get to make up credits. But we did see, especially at the secondary level, an increase in retentions, even when we said, like, be very cautious about how many kids you want to retain, what's in the best interest of the students. But we did have a lot of students that online learning just fell back too much, and we had to keep them for a little longer.
Have you entertained the idea of, I guess they call it year-round school? My dad was on a school board when I was younger, and I thought that was the nastiest words he could ever say to me. But as a parent, I understand, because that long break during the summer, a lot of the students lose that that knowledge, and the first couple months that they come back to school is catching up to what they left in June. So is that something that has been discussed, especially in light of the pandemic?
So we've talked about that option. I will say in the previous district where we work, there's two options to year-round schooling. The first one is to take the 180 days and space them out differently.
Right.
The other one is to add more days. And I've done both. And communities we really need to work with the communities and the parents, because there's a lot of pushback on this. You would think that there wouldn't be, because we're offering this. We're constantly negotiating with families, even for them to come to summer programs, and say, because if you take 180 days and you space them out differently, you're still using the July months, for example. And that's still the time frame that a parent that a family may say, I'm not sending my kid for that entire period of time. So we could definitely look into this. We need to work a lot with community to get the community buy-in and support to do that. And it's one of the options potentially, so that you don't get the summer slide. There's certain kids that we don't want extended time away from instruction. And those are the ones that we're trying to bring in just during the summer as well. So we'll look into it. It always means we need to negotiate contracts, and there's a lot of infrastructural pieces that need to be thought of to do that, communities need to be ready. Because as soon as you start the school year, for example, that also has attendance. And so if kids are not used to coming at a certain time, and families are like, I'm not sending them until this time, that attendance now counts towards them. In the summer, it doesn't penalize them in some way. So something that we really need to work with communities to get their buy-in.
Thank you. Go ahead,
One
Councilman.
other question I thought about, you talked about classes, excuse me, in the evening. Are you capable of doing self-paced classes on the computer? Is that allowable at that level of education?
Yeah, we actually have some. And I would say that those are appropriate for students who have learned how they learn. So once you are an independent learner, that's not necessarily a problem. College level students that are ready learned how to do that. And we offer some of those classes now. We offer some of those classes during the summer. The reality is that a lot of our students sometimes that fall behind are still learning how they learn and need a lot of support. So even if we do virtual classes or self-paced classes in some way, we still interject the office hours. So you can go to a staff member and say, I'm stuck. I don't understand how they described how to take, a derivative of a mathematical equation, for example. And so somebody can work with them, because students are still learning who they are as learners and still need that support. But we have a lot of students who can take those classes also online and succeed. We just have to be able to offer them and pay teachers to teach extra classes and have that additional flexibility.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes.
Thank you.
Best of luck finishing out the school year. You're almost done. All right, next up will be the public art installation at Town Hall. Keep La Plata beautiful. Chairman Wang.
Madam Mayor and Council, Kelly Phelps, Legislative Services, Keep La Plata Beautiful Program Coordinator, here with Shannon Wang, the Chair of our Arts Work Group, to bring you the project that we're planning for our front yard.
Yeah, so the purpose of this meeting, and thank you very much for putting us on the agenda and taking the time, is to get approval, your thoughts on this sculpture for the front yard of the town hall. As you know, we became the Bird City of Maryland, and with that came money for public arts. And we had an RFP and have this sculpture here, this design by Howard Connolly, and have it placed in the front of Town Hall, right in front of the tree right ahead. And it's gone through 3 different groups to narrow down, one, the design, also talk about safety issues, talk about how it integrates with the town. Is this a good match for the town? Does it, give us a level up, an interest, a selfie spot, all these things to bring, awareness of the fact that we are the first bird city of Maryland, that the purple martin is our town bird. And a lot of research went into the design of this. He was extensive in his research on the feathers, how many feathers are in the wing. There was also talk of using the wings on the other side, the side that you can't see right now, having it engraved with different facts about the purple martin, the habitat, migration, feeding, range, things of that nature, so you can learn about it while also, posing in front of it. This is meant to be half steel plates with cutouts to define the feathers, the bird, the beak, and it will be powder coated with iridescent purple and blue paint. And when we say that, we don't mean like loud 80s colors. He's really going for like the true purple martin colors. And you're able to kind of stand nestled in the wing, as you see in the picture, or you can also sit kind of on the tail as well. A little bit about Howard. I have worked with him, gosh, I'm dating myself, but I don't know, it's about 25 years ago or so. I helped him make sculptures and designs for inside restaurants, outside picnics, picnic areas and things of that nature. He's done an extensive amount of work for Discovery Channel up in Silver Spring, different parks in Tacoma Park, things of that nature. So being aware of public use, children, jumping on things or climbing on things is definitely not foreign to him. So the safety of this was absolutely a crucial part of the, design and our discussions as we got to this point to get to you guys. And these are some samples of work that he has done over the years with lots of metal work, woodwork. He's also done a lot of work in styrofoam. You'd be surprised what you can make with styrofoam. Like almost half of King's Dominion is styrofoam. It's so weird.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's going to be, so the next phase, if you all are okay with this, the next phase is to get more detailed drawings, different perspectives of this design with specified, sizes and things of that nature. As of right now, it is approximately 6 feet tall and 11 to 12 feet wide. And what am I forgetting? I don't know. I think that's all I have to say about it. But yeah, so I can field any questions. We also did meet with the beautification. It's beautification.
Yep,
Yes.
beautification was the last one.
To make sure that they were okay with this design as well and to get their input in it. They were, we more so wanted to know how they felt about not only the placement, but the surrounding areas of the sculpture. And they had suggested a mulch that's recycled, like a rubber type of material that would also let water go through, and it would be a softer surface than just the ground or any type of cement or anything like that. So that's slated to go on the bottom of it. The sculpture itself is fully funded because of the Bird City, clarification, or how we won that. And so we would just need to find some money somehow for the mulch at the bottom, but we're optimistic that that will happen, so. Okay.
All right, thank you very much. I will open the floor for council. Councilwoman Bryant Ward.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Evelyn Bryant Ward, Ward 3. In the image,
Mhm.
the little figure
Mhm.
is not a part of it, is it?
No,
Okay.
very
Um,
good
and-
question.
And the
It's not.
paint, the paint,
Mhm.
is it chippable?
It is powder coat. It will also have a graffiti, coating, anti-graffiti coating on it. I know he commented on that about, he's guaranteeing it, I believe it was 5-ish years. And would provide like touch-up paints, I believe. That was definitely talked about. And it's almost like automotive paint that he would be using. So it is not supposed to be chipping for about, I think it was 5 years. He may have even said 10 now.
It's 10,
Thank you.
and
Thank you.
everything is chippable if you want to bad enough.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? Go ahead, Councilman Jenkins.
Councilman Jenkins, Ward 4, thank you again for your efforts on this. Looking at the drawing, is it fair, so this would be located as you're facing Town Hall to the right?
Mhm.
And so would there be any shrubbery around, or it's just going to be that kind of a rubbery vault, for a better word?
It hasn't been
Okay.
finalized there. There are bushes in front of the tree that's located there now, but I believe there was plans to remove those.
Beautification Commission is planning to remove those in the
Okay.
landscaping project.
And then, assuming it moves forward, what's the timeline for the installation of the sculpture?
When we started, he was, let's see, the last we heard, he was going to be, he'd be in production in fall. I believe it was August or September of this year, and it would take a month or two. It would be before the end of the year.
And then you'd have to bring it here to install it.
Oh, installation was going to be done by the fall.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
One of the things, Matt Challenger, Ward 2, thank you, Ms. Wang, for your presentation. One of the things I liked about the sculpture itself was the amount of detail that the sculptor placed on rounded edges. So for example, in the picture that we see, it's kind of a pointy end to the tail, but that's just an illustration, but there's no real pointed edge to this sculpture itself. Is that fair, my recollection?
It is correct. Yeah, correct.
Smooth surface, rounded edges, to not be some kind of, poking or anything like that by somebody that's around.
Yeah, I mean, feathers that are made of stainless steel cut does make it seem like it could just be knives, there, but no, everything is going to be a softed, rounded edge.
Okay, thank you.
For that.
Any other questions? I have a question about the rubber mulch.
Yeah.
That's there. When I think of mulch and I think of that in a grassy area, I think about the high winds and what a mess that might make out on the grass. Does it need mulch or could it have the base that is concrete like it looks like here? And then who would be taking care of the mulch when you're mowing the lawn and stuff? Again, I try to think of ease. Would it be easier and safer, it's all about safety as well, to not to have the mulch there?
Madam Mayor, I also made a note of that because I have concerns about the mulch, but there's also the poured option, which I think Bobby's probably going to talk to, that we actually went out and tried to receive grant funding to provide that sort of sponge surface under playground equipment. We've been unsuccessful at this point, but this is a much smaller area. So I think it would be much more cost effective as far as maintenance goes, maybe to do that as a workaround, because I do see that the mulch would get into the grass and then, you're mowing the mulch and having concerns with that. But that's something we can definitely work with.
Just insight, Madam Mayor, from the Beautification Commission's idea about the rubber mulch was that it would provide a natural barrier such that it would keep the lawn mowing activities away from the sculpture, which is one of the concerns of it getting nicked and chipped. Rubber mulch is typically used at a lot of playgrounds because it's a very giving material when somebody falls, and it's reusable, it's recyclable, and it's non-toxic. So that was a suggestion by the Beautification Committee, but I'm sure they're open to however we would want to put it together. But it was more safety.
And I agree with that. And I'm thinking, when I think mulch, I think of the wrestlers with their mulch that they are, the bags of mulch versus what it looks like is a rubber pad.
Mhm.
That rubber pad, I understand. I think that's what Brent was talking about as well. It's called recycled rubber mulch, but it's not, that one's showing the little pieces. I think the little pieces might be a little challenging for mowing. I see Bobby has his hand up.
One of the reasons we go surface is because the rubber mulch is not ADA accessible. So when the kids, you couldn't roll a wheelchair in there very easily. And so the reason we were going with the poured surface was because the poured surface, although it's very giving and it's very soft and that, it also allows for ADA accessibility. And so that's one of the main reasons that we wanted to do that. Even the reason, like at our playgrounds today, interestingly enough, the playground mulch that we buy special, and it is very expensive mulch, is actually considered ADA accessible, and the actual chipped rubber mulch is not. So it's hard to figure that, but that's the way it is at this point. And so that was one of the reasons we were going back with the poured in rubber, was to try to maintain ADA accessibility in that situation.
Yeah, and then also within that treatment, it's a metal edge typically that is placed sort of as you see the circle outline there. So you would edge it out and then you pour into that edging. So it's very clean. So.
Okay, so then you would we'd need to reconsider the aesthetics of having a poured rubber mat in the front of Town Hall.
Right.
Does that let water through? I know that was a big concern for the beautification.
I'm not sure, Bobby, how porous that is. I think it may run off. Yeah, it would run off.
Okay. That was one of their concerns.
Yeah, another concern is playgrounds that communities I've worked at before is heels. Women's shoes will easily puncture that surface, and so it does require maintenance. You have to be very cognizant of the type of footwear that goes out on that, and maybe we could get a little denser pour for that. But something we can investigate further, and it's the focus should be on the beautiful sculpture. And
Well, that's what I was just going to say. I'm glad that that's what
Yeah.
we're talking about and have a problem with, and not the sculpture itself. So
No, and so we spent.
that means it's good.
We spent a great deal more time talking about safety as far as somebody being on the sculpture and falling off of it onto a harder surface like a poured rubber as opposed to mulch. And then natural mulch obviously would have to be replaced. That's an ongoing expense where rubber mulch is not.
And it would have an edging. The same company that makes this does make an edge around, so it would help contain the mulch, just FYI.
I think that area needs to be explored more, but Are you looking, Brent, are we looking for a consensus to move forward with
I
this?
believe that's where we're at in the process.
Okay, so I'm going to poll the council, see where you are. We're talking about the sculpture and not really the installation. Yes,
Madam Mayor, can I go ahead and tell you what you're giving us consensus to do?
please.
Our next step will be releasing $5,000 from the amount that we had budgeted for this project so that Howard can start the more detailed drawings. And then we'll be able to see what it'll look like from top and sides.
Okay, so we're not even committing yet to
No.
the sculpture.
No, that's just the more detailed drawings.
Okay, Councilman Goldsmith, are you okay with that? Councilman Challenger?
Yes.
Councilwoman Bryant Ward? Yes. Councilman Jenkins?
Yes.
And I am as well. So we look forward to the detailed drawings.
Fantastic.
So thank you very much. Thank
Right,
you,
thank
Shannon.
you,
Thank you,
guys.
Kelly. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
All right, next on our agenda is the FY '23 proposed budget and capital plan with Mr. Greenville.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Kevin Greenville, Town Treasurer. Tonight, we bring forward to you several outstanding budget items for the FY '23 proposed budget and capital improvement plan. The first being a council request, which I thought was a great idea to sort of do a comparison of an average FY '22 bill, utility bill versus an FY '23 bill. We used an assumption of 184 average gallons for a residential user. I think when you look at this from the median perspective, it's probably the FY '22 bill, I think, was more in line of $350. So I do think there are some high users who sort of drag up when you do look at it from the average. The average quarterly bill for the current fiscal year is $389.72. With our FY '23 proposed rates, we're looking at a average quarterly bill of $403.19. That is a quarterly proposed increase of $13.47 and an annual proposed increase of $53.88. And I do intend to incorporate this into our budget documents moving forward, just looking a little prettier. So if you have any questions.
Any questions on this comparison? Councilman Challenger?
No, just thank you for laying it out. I think it's helpful to see it in concrete terms, that it's not so bad of an increase on the average. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to the proposed fee schedule for FY '23.
So last work session, we brought forward the fee schedule. There were just a couple comments. So highlighted in yellow are changes based off the discussion last week with just input from council and input from the police department. The accident reports, incident reports, and those items have been made to be whole round numbers. That was one change we made. The other being on page 2, the traffic study review, that is now incorporated into the schedule of fees. And I'm still finalizing the major facility fee. I should have that number shortly. We are just using the sort of the guidance and formula that our consultants gave us on that. So I will have that to you. I'll send it to you, and it will be on the schedule of fees that is presented for the public hearing next week.
All right. Council, any questions, comments? All right, good. Moving on to the next one. Human resources.
This is a memorandum to mayor and council on the addition of a human resources position in the FY '23 budget. Council directed staff to explore the possibility of adding this position. The recent organizational study that was performed did recommend the addition of a human resource position. And based off guidance from them and also just us doing our own research, if we do have that position, we would recommend it being a human resources generalist. And just a brief description, it assesses personnel policies, programs, and procedures, and informs employee and management personnel on the interpretation of them, performs professional level human resources work, and carries out responsibilities in one or more functional areas, such as staffing, employee relations, compensation, training, employment, labor relations, safety, affirmative action, and employment equity programs, and personnel research. We recommend that this position report to the assistant town manager. Based off the recently completed class and compensation study, staff recommends this position be classified as an L10 with a median salary of $77,763. The total cost for this new position, including salary and benefits, is approximately $108,000. We did get our final health insurance renewal for FY23 last week. We budgeted a 5% increase for health insurance. The overall increase actually came in at 1.4%, which is really, really excellent. Unfortunately, that's only a savings of approximately $25,000. So the remaining $83,190, we will either need to fund that through other budgetary reductions or using our fund balance. That's just that we did this based off of your guys' direction. So I open it up for discussion.
Councilwoman Bryant Ward.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Greenville, the savings, the staff budgeted at 5% increase. However, the overall increase was 1.4%. Does that take into consideration the additional staff that we plan to hire or the vacancies that we have?
Yes, it does. So we use when we budget for health insurance for vacant positions, we take the average of what our current employees are doing, because there's a huge difference between somebody who doesn't elect our health insurance versus somebody who has a family of 5. It's a real significance. So there's always a big variance in that and in us doing that.
So I want to make sure I understand. So if we backfill those positions, this reduction or the increase of 1.4% would take into consideration us backfilling those positions, or no?
Yes. So the 1.4%, it is for vacant. It's for all the proposed positions in our FY23 budget. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Go ahead, Councilman Jenkins.
Councilman Jenkins, Ward 4, thank you for doing this. That's good. I just had a question about the brief job description. What is the source of that description?
So that came our Paypoint HR, who did our class and comp in our organizational study. They're always free for us sort of to ask them questions, and they have a service that they pay for, or they're sort of able to pull like a lot of them. They're able to like look at a zip code and tell, what's the average salary for a position like this. So we talked with them, and they recommended not going with sort of a director position for our current staffing needs, more of a manager position, which is what a human resources generalist would be. I mean, it's not an entry level, it's not a director, it's sort of in that upper threshold, and that is where that job descriptions comes from, is that website. So we would work on a formal job description, obviously, for the position and tweak it. I mean, that's not final. This is just us sort of a general guidance of where we see the need for the HR position.
I only asked the question because I'm not an HR expert, but I do know there's a group that maybe can provide some help. Society for Human Resources. I mean, is that what something you know about, Councilwoman? I mean, just another source of information. That's all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry. So, given the level of staffing that this person would be responsible for and the information that they would need to manage the various departments and nuances that go with it, and we're confident that an HR generalist is the person that we want?
Well, I believe that they would be, right now, human resources is really divided between Michelle, myself, and Martha. And I still think that we would work, intimately with the individual. So I don't know where you feel comfortable going up with that threshold. We spoke with them and just, I feel like an HR generalist would be able to meet our needs, and working with us provide sort of that, strategic initiative. So this is just our recommendation to you, if you guys believe, the position, it warrants a higher level.
I think the intent was to take that off of your plate, giving we got two people handling a budget the size that we have. And having someone that can manage and know the HR laws and policies that can create policies that may be lacking right now, I think they would need that knowledge, that experience to do that. And I think that's what we were actually looking for. I just don't think a generalist is it, especially coming in to a position that's really new. I
Right.
know that we've spread it out amongst three folk before, but this would really be a new position with everything being developed by this person. And I just think that a generalist is probably not the experience that we would want for that. Just my thought.
So would you think a director level?
I would think a director level,
be
because the
appropriate?
training and the education experience is a lot different than a generalist.
Okay.
And I think someone who can just step in and then learn about our town. Step in, they need to know, as Councilwoman Bryant Ward said, all of the laws, rules, regulations. My question would be, once that is taken off of your plate, off of Michelle's plate and Martha's plate, when we did the comp study, was that included in your job description? So your pay was either indicated that you're doing too much, not enough? Was that taken in there? So when that comes out and that's no longer your responsibility, how does it affect the pay, especially of the three of you?
Yeah, I don't believe, at least from my job description or Martha's, that is included in their HR responsibility. So that's something we sort of take. But finance and HR always work, intimately with each other and day in and day out. So I don't think that really affects our job descriptions per se, or even our workload in some ways, because finance always does have to, still do things. I think it would take us having to, do some of these things of setting policies and procedures. And I think that is a very valid point of getting somebody who can step in right away and do that.
So if you have taken from, so Michelle's doing that right now, and boy, she's been doing an amazing job with the tools that she has. If we make it a director position, it no longer needs to fall under her guidance. It would be, I guess, under Brent's. Brent would be that.
Correct. Most likely, yes.
Okay, so I'm just making sure that, I guess the roundabout way I'm asking is, how will that impact her salary, if at all? And as Councilwoman Bryant Ward said, I do think the director is the way to go with as much as we need to catch up on and put in place.
Well,
for that.
if I may add, Mayor James, it may not affect her salary, but she may be able to the town may be able to better utilize her skills and abilities so that she's not dealing with HR. There's other areas that Michelle's more than capable of taking on. She just doesn't have the time to. So this would free her up to provide, additional support to me as well as other departments. So at this time, I think it would be a direct benefit to the organization overall to free her up and let her utilize some of her other expertises.
That's a perfect answer, and that's exactly what I was looking for. And one other thing, kind of on the line of salaries, is that we had briefly discussed, and we'll take a vote on the HR in just a second, but we had briefly discussed about perhaps having steps in the salaries instead of going low, medium, high. And that is something that I'm interested in finding out more about, because I think that is, it could be, it's a double-edged sword. It could be really good, and it could be something that may not be what we want. Do you think with a new director of HR coming in that they could assess that, or do you think that's something that we need to do before the finalization of our budget?
Well, I think we would need to discuss that with the Paypoint HR, who did our class and compensation study. I know Dr. Campbell recommended us going with the low, median, high And there are advantages to that. There are disadvantages, just like going to a step, there are advantages and disadvantages. So if that's something you would like them to explore, I think they would be willing to. I just don't know how much work that would be for them to sort of go with creating a step scale. So that is something we could reach out to and bring forward to mayor and council.
Since that's on the table right now, and then we'll go back to HR. Council, do you want to weigh in on that to see if we want Karen to look at that? Councilwoman Bryant Ward?
Madam Mayor, I don't believe so. I think that when we looked at our, we're going from, not having a true pay scale to something that would make the staff feel more like they're being compensated for the work that they do. And I think we need to get there. I don't think spending money with PayPoint is necessary. They've taken the time that they need to evaluate our, the current pay scale and make the recommendations. I think we just simply need to move forward. It's been a long time coming.
That's been.
I think most of us are probably used to steps as far as different jobs. Low, medium, high is kind of a new concept to visualize for us. So I think it's maybe we just don't understand it. And whereas steps we do, but I think it works. Just let it go. Rather than spending a lot more money to just get it to say steps.
Any other comments?
Well, as Councilman Goldsmith said, I guess I'm of the old school. I was always used to steps. I just have mixed feelings about it. I mean, I understand the need to move forward now, but at the same token, I'm just somewhat hesitant about, frankly, rushing into making a decision because we have an artificial timeline of July 1st to pass the budget. I mean, I get that part, but I'm just frankly on the fence about it. But I also would agree to diverse a little bit with the HR that it should be a directorship because this will also help us as the staff grows too, so that person can accommodate that. So I know we'll talk about that later.
And the one thing I heard about the steps that's a positive is when the banks are looking at giving you loans for houses or whatever, or a house. They look at that progression. And I have heard of a story, a personal story here, that a person was not able to get a loan because of the step. And that's what concerns me, that they don't know where the next raise is coming. So maybe that's a topic that when we do get our amazing director of HR that they look at, and maybe we, for this budget right now, we go as it is presented right now. But I think that it's worth a little more exploring, especially when it becomes to the detriment of someone that they're not getting, securing a loan because they don't have the steps to show.
And I do know, Mayor James, when we fill out those verification employment, we do always lean on the side of the benefit there's usually a line there that says, when is their next expected pay increase? It doesn't look really out multiple years. It looks at their next one. And we do always try to give the best within, reason to give them the benefit of the doubt of their next raise. And
That's good to know. That's good to know.
So when we bring the way I understand, and I just went through a market adjustment, and this is basically what we're talking about. Where they are now is not where they should have been. They should have been stepped back in time because the salary is not comparable to the market. And so giving them the market adjustment, and that's what I see it as, it does not negate them getting a raise the next year when it's time for an increase, right? Okay.
I understand that. Okay, so I guess on the table right now is whether or not we want to approve this HR position, and as suggested by Councilwoman Bryant Ward, making it a director's position and get this moving forward. So I'm going to just get a consensus. Councilman Goldsmith?
Yeah, definitely an HR position. And I think as Councilman Bryant Ward indicated, at the director level.
Councilman Trollinger?
I approve. I agree.
Councilwoman Bryant Ward?
I agree. Thank you.
Councilman Jenkins?
I would concur that it should be elevated to a directorship position.
As do I. So
Thank you.
thank you for that. Appreciate that. All right, next down to the OPEB study.
What, so, actually, Mayor, I have a attachment, just a overview of La Plata property taxes and potential benefits to La Plata employees. And I guess, I just would like to say, that anything I say when discussing this is just my professional opinion. Anything I may say about LEOPS, I will say what I told the Kalia assessor privately, I'll say publicly. The La Plata Police Department is one of the best police departments I've ever worked with. Chief Schinner is a great colleague, a great police chief. Lieutenant Payne, all the guys that I work with. So I just wanted to say that it's my professional opinion in my position. So it's nothing I say is a criticism of our police department. I think our police department is great.
You're just the numbers guy.
Yes. So just to begin is an overview of La Plata property taxes. The effective property tax rate for a La Plata resident for next fiscal year, the county did adopt their tax rate as far as I know today. Unfortunately, the county has the second highest county tax rate in Maryland, number one being Baltimore City, which is considered a county. The county tax rate is $1.14. There's also a property tax rate on the county fire and rescue that is attached to the property. That is at a 0.064 cents. Our tax rate for La Plata is 0.32, 32 cents. Our tax differential for next fiscal year is 14.2 cents. And just as a reminder, the tax differential is a reduction in the La Plata residents tax for duplicate services. So for services that we provide in lieu of the county. According to our constant yield tax rate notice, a 1 cent tax rate increase would approximately equal $142,000. Potential benefits to La Plata employees. These are both recommendations within the class and compensation study, recommendations by staff as well. The first one is the Municipal Law Enforcement Officers Pension System, LEOPS. The second is a retiree health benefit plan. The third is salary adjustments. The fourth is a 457B match. The fifth is a 457B contribution. The sixth is an acceleration of vacation accruals, and 7 is bereavement leave. The first item is the Municipal Law Officers Pension System. Currently, staff is in basically the same pension plan, but it's broken out into two separate categories based off when you join the pension plan. So for those employees who joined on or before June 30th of 2011, they're in what is called the alternate contributory pension selection, the ACPS. Those employees who joined on July 1st, 2011 or after, they are what's called the Reformed Contributory Pension Benefit, RCPB. And what we're discussing under this line item is the LEOPS, Municipal Law Enforcement Officers Pension System. And just to briefly highlight just some of the differences. Contributions, 7% of earnable compensation for all three pension plans. Normal retirement age is 62 for those who joined before June 30th, 2011. Age 65 for those who joined after, and age of 50 for LEOPS. The normal service retirement eligibility is for ACPS 30 years of eligibility service or age 62 with 5 years of eligibility service. The RCPB is combined age and eligibility service of at least 90 years or age 65 with 10 years of eligibility service. And LEOPS is 25 years of eligibility service or age of 50. The difference in the allowance, 1.8% of your average final compensation for the 3 highest consecutive years. The RCPB is 1.5%, and LEOPS is 2% of average final compensation for the 5 highest consecutive years, with a maximum benefit of 65% of average final compensation. Early retirement, there is none under LEOPS. Within the other two, you can retire early under some different rules, but they do reduce your benefit by 0.5% for each month that you do retire early with a reduction maximum. Vested allowance, 5 years of eligibility service for the ACPS, 10 years for the RCPB, and 10 years for LEOPS. One of the big benefits of LEOPS is what's called the Deferred Retirement Option Plan, the DROP. It allows a officer of at least 25 years and less than 30 to basically take their retirement for those years. It's dropped into a retirement account that accrues compounded interest. And when you retire from the agency, you're given that amount, and then you can collect your service benefit. The funded ratio as of June 30th, 2021, for the pensions, the employee's pension is 85.54%. LEOPS is 71.81%. And, you know, the big difference is that contribution rate. Our current pensions at approximately 10, not approximately, it is at 10.93%. And LEOPS for the next fiscal year is at 36.2%. This is a projected LEOPS calculation at the top of page 4. The FY23 police officer salary, this only includes sworn officers and does not include anyone who's already retired from LEOPS. Times the LEOPS rate of 36.2%. Our estimated FY23 LEOPS cost is approximately $614,000. Just to show the net LEOPS cost, I reduced what the current pension amount is for those police officers, and you're looking at a total FY23 net LEOPS cost of $428,000. We also performed a LEOPS actuarial study that looked at the cost for us to buy back the years of service of our police officers for LEOPS, basically making them whole within the LEOPS system. That net enrollment liability really decreased. I think our last one was around 1.1 million. It decreased down to $662,000. You have the option of paying that up front. You can also take it as debt and pay it over 20 years back to the state. If you do that debt, it's $54,000 per year. And our total FY23 net LEOPS cost is $482,000, including that yearly enrollment liability payment. With a 1 cent tax increase of $142,000, you would look at a tax increase to fund LEOPS of 3.39 cents. The chart below just shows the last 5 years of the LEOPS employer contribution rate. And you can see it has increased from a little under 31% all the way up to 36.2%. The information below is, this is not any sort of statement on our police force or their effectiveness. This is merely showing the taxpayers' return on investment of the police expenditures based off the tax differential. So what they're getting back in property tax for their investment. We calculate our tax differential for the police based off Charles County's numbers of their calls for service within La Plata. I don't think we necessarily always agree with their numbers, but their numbers are ultimately what we use. And if you look over the past 5 years, we've invested about $1 million into the police budget, and that number's only dropped 4%. 2020 was, a COVID year, sort of an outlier. But, I think if that number continues to be calculated as it is, we may have reached some sort of equilibrium with, getting that number down for, future investments into the police budget. And it is typical for a municipality to have a tax difference. It's never 100% you're getting back. The county always provides services typically that you don't provide. So I just present that sort of so you can see sort of the return on investment from a property tax perspective. Unfortunately, with sort of the cost of LEOPS, it is a substantial cost to our operating budget. I really believe the only way you can fund it is through tax increases. We certainly could maybe throw some fund balance at it, but it is such a large operating cost, and it does grow with each year. And, with each police officer you hire, my projected 5-year cost is approximately $3.275 million. That projection is I didn't fluff that number. The variables I used, I think, were on the conservative side. It takes into account adding 3 police officers per year for the next 5 years. And it also doesn't include Chief Schinner retiring either. So I kept him, on not included in that LEOPS calculation. The next item is a retiree health benefit plan. This is, we had NFP, who is our health insurance broker, do a actuarial study for the cost of a retiree health benefit plan. They did this free of charge, which was very nice of them. They quoted us a price of $21,000. It's what they typically charge to do this. So it was very nice of them. They are our health insurance brokers. And just real quick, to understand the purpose of this report, it's to assist us in conducting an other post-employment benefits OPEB study that meets the requirements of the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, GASP, statement number 75. A current retiree benefit plan does not exist for the town, so the sole purpose of this report is a guide for us to make decisions regarding the design and implementation of the retiree benefit plan. This report has been prepared by the town's actuary, NFP, as of the valuation date of March 1st. Should the town of La Plata decide to establish an OPEB plan for future retirees, the valuation date will need to be aligned with the town's fiscal year, and an updated census will be used for valuation purposes. GASP statement number 75, it establishes accounting and financial reporting requirements for government employees who sponsor or participate in other post-retirement benefits plans. Basically, the number that they're presenting here is the liability that we would carry initially on our financial statements for the post-retirement benefit plan. And Craig, if you could go to page 4, please. We had NFP look at 9 different scenarios for this plan. The first one, they call it pension rules, but it sort of really just follows like LEOPS and our current employees' pension rules. It's a rule of 90 for all non-police. And for police, they must attain at least age 50 or have accumulated 25 years of service with the town. So it's basically LEOPS and our current employee pension. That was just one of the scenarios we did. The second scenario we did was, just one second. The second scenario we did was a rule of 75, where age plus accumulated service at the time of retirement must equal to at least 75. This would be for all employees. It wouldn't distinguish between the two, and it would allow a possible path forward for employees who are able to retire from the town to do it with some health insurance once they reach that age of 75. And the third scenario we did was a rule of 90 eligibility, where a rule of 90 where age plus accumulated service at the time of retirement must equal to at least 90. When looking at this, within each of those 3 scenarios, we did one where the employer I'm sorry.
Are you saying someone would retire at 90?
No, so that's a rule of 90 where
The age of 90, and I'm like,
But
that's
it's,
years of service plus age equals 90.
so they work 30 years and they're 60. At 60, they can retire because it equals
okay,
90.
I thought he said. I
But
was
if
like.
you ask some, I know, if you
I was
ask
like,
some of
what?
them, they're
I
gonna
was
feel
like,
like it is.
So I heard you wrong, sorry.
And within each of those, we did a 0% employer contribution, which means that the employee pays 100%. We did a 50% employer contribution, and we also did a 100% employer contribution. It seems to be for, smaller local governments who offer health insurance and retirement, they seem to go for that 50% employer contribution. And just when you consider this, entering into this, we currently offer a very good health insurance benefit to our employees. They don't pay a premium. They just pay their deductible, and we fund that deductible at 70% through the HSA. If we were to enter into something like this, but these retirees would be pooled with us. So it is just thinking that, this could, potentially raise what we pass along to our employees in the near term and in the future. We, as you can see from our insurance renewal, we do get really great rates right now, but it is just something to consider with there's a cost to everything and pros and cons to everything. And below is the 10-year expected benefit payments for each scenario and contribution requirement. And this is the estimated contribution that the town would have to make to the OPEB fund. So just take, for example, a rule of 75 at 50%. Our OPEB liability for that would be $780,000. Typically, governments, when they fund these, they will do 50% of the OPEB liability into sort of the trust plan. And then we would have to make contributions each year based off the actuarial data. And for that one, you can see it starts in the first year at 4,127, and it increases to 70,000 by year 2031. We offer no health insurance benefit in retirement to our employees right now. And this cost is not as substantial as I thought it would be. However, if we were to establish an OPEB plan, we would have to go back through an actuarial study, which we would need to pay for, and we would also need help just from a consultant in establishing that and making sure we do everything right and by the books. And if you guys want to ask me questions as we go, I'm sort of just going through these. Were there any questions on the OPEB?
I guess one quick question. You got a 10-year expected benefit payment. Is that just something that you picked as being a 10-year, or is there any relationship to life expectancy?
So they use just 10 years as a standard rule. They did not look at life expectancy when projecting out these benefit payments numbers. No.
Mm-hmm.
The available funding sources for this, we could use fund balance for the initial contribution. And as time goes on, operating revenue increases for future funding. I don't think at least the numbers they're showing to us now, it's not a undue hardship on our operating budget. The third benefit we looked at was salary adjustments. The recent class and compensation study provided the following salary adjustment choices. The 50th percentile with an estimated cost of $72,377, which would impact 19 employees, and the 70th percentile with an estimated cost of $448,493. That would impact 55 employees. The chart below that shows the CPI for the Washington, Arlington, Alexandria area. And this was included in the presentation by PayPoint HR. And I think what they're trying to show here is inflation. How, their report that they presented is only a snapshot of time, and that with rampant inflation as it is, their studies only good for so long. When you have 7%, 8% inflation, how good is a class and compensation study? We are recommending, based off that, going to the 65th percentile for the salary adjustment. That would be an estimated cost of $317,509. It would impact approximately, they're estimating 49 employees. The cost of this, we can use ARPA funds for FY23 and FY24. We could also use fund balance, and we could also include operating revenue increases. In looking at the ARPA summary of projects, just, I think some projects that we could look at decreasing. The Dorchester Community Center, we just received a bond bill for that. We also have money funded in our capital improvement plan, and we also have a state grant for that. Maybe that's something we could reduce. The Charles Street revitalization and refacing, it's at $250,000. Maybe that's something we could look at reducing. And the La Plata Community Foundation, there's $100,000. We could look at maybe reducing that from ARPA money. These are just recommendations, however you guys would like to proceed, but that would save us $325,000. It would fund it for the next fiscal year. And as we move forward, the idea being when we have these ARPA projects are going to cost, we're going to have funds available to use. And I think if we can use ARPA money in FY23, FY24, by the time we come around to FY25, we will have already built these salary increases into our operating budgets.
Kevin, I'd just like to speak on this. I love the idea of going up to 65th percentile versus 50 like we had discussed. And the three that you have identified as pulling from ARPA funding, I think that the $100,000, based on the information that we received just in this, I think that's a perfect one to use. And as you stated, the DCC, maybe cut that from 250 to 125, and same with the streetscaping, especially since we are getting some assistance from CGA on how to help us with working with SHA. Yeah, CGA and SHA are working together, and I think those would be viable options if council is in agreement with reducing those three to increase the salary adjustment to 65th percentile. Comments?
Yes, so Kevin, thanks for putting this together. I'm a little confused, but because I think the last time we talked about it, we had some concerns, or at least you voiced some concerns about using ARPA funding for recurring costs. And I know you said by the time we get there, so to speak, it will be part of our operating budget. How does that occur? How does that happen?
So when the first FY23, we would fund it with the reductions we just talked about. Right. In FY24, we would have probably, I'm assuming, more ARPA money that we would use to sort of offset that. And by the fifth year, we would have planned these increases, for those years. So it wouldn't be it's almost already built into our budget and into our budgetary decisions. We're not going to just come to FY25 and be like, oh, we have a $325,000 gap. We're going to plan that as we go through each budget, and it will be sort of built into the operating cost by that time. So with revenue increases over the next 2 fiscal years, and when we project those FY25 numbers, I agree it's not ideal to use ARPA funds for operating expenditures, but I don't think, considering the amount of ARPA money we got and considering our budget, I don't think it's using it for those 2 fiscal years is going to cause us, any sort of financial distress.
And in the scheme of how ARPA funding was intended to be used and is now the current recommendations or current guidelines. This is a more flexible option than we originally first thought.
Correct, yeah.
Because at first, my understanding was that ARPA funding could not go toward salary, pension, benefits of any kind, but could go for capital investments, so forth, right?
And that is, yeah, the Treasury's final ruling came out in January and allowed us to take a standard deduction up to $10 million, which fortunate for us is more than the total amount we got. So yes, you are correct. I still don't think we can use it. I still think pension deposits are prohibited. But we can, since taking the standard deduction, we can pay employee salary with ARPA funds.
Okay. Okay. My other question is, you had said that we could, and I know we're kind of jumping back, but we had talked about some of the, the pension and the benefits that we're looking at for our town and for some of our town employees, and potentially for all of our town employees. Could we not, I mean, we're making an assumption that we're going to have better finances in 3 to 5 years when we get through that first 2 years of ARPA funding. Can we not do the same and forecast that out for other projects as well as it relates to our town retirement system?
In Councilman Challenger, what specifically would you be looking at with using those funds?
So we've essentially found money potentially that we don't have because we're taking a long-term approach and we're anticipating a greater budget. I mean, is that the simplest way to look at it?
Yeah, with our growth, yes.
Can we not forecast the same for some of our other projects that we were looking at, whether it's LEOPS, whether it's a different retirement plan? It seems like we're kind of looking at it. I mean, they're both, we've got big expenditures here on either side, but on one side, we've just found $325,000 to help fund. On the other side, just kind of saying, hey, we're going to have to increase taxes by 3 cents already from the gate.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a fair point. I think speaking to LEOPS and that cost is substantial for year one and it grows. And I think if we were to take ARPA funding to somehow apply it to salaries to offset for something like LEOPS, I just think that it's too much money. It's when you forecast that out over the next 2 to 3 years, I think you could get yourself in trouble and forecast and project using that with such a substantial amount of operating revenue increase.
Going back to the retiree health benefit plan, is there an option to give an enhancement to boots on the ground to the workers that are out there in the dangerous situations, such as public works and the police, to give them 10% different than the other retirement?
Well, I think there's 2 ways you can do that. The first being with how we establish the OPEB plan. You can make the rules different for public safety, and public works, I believe, is considered public safety now within that. So that is a way for those physical demanding jobs. That's one way to give them enhanced benefits. Another, which I will get into in a little bit, is some sort of retirement contribution for those physically demanding jobs. And that is just a little bit down within my document. And I'll speak to that.
Thank you. Do we need, go ahead, Councilman Goldsmith.
Yeah, I do have one question. As we're looking at this, earlier figures and stuff you put in, a lot of figures absorbed right now as well. But you were paying 3.37% increase in cost. And then you made a statement as far as revenue increases. What revenue increase opportunities do we have besides property tax?
Councilman Goldsmith, what page are you referring to? Just so
That was just a general statement.
Okay.
There's no one page I'm looking at.
So, when
I'm semi-lost. Let's put it that way.
Okay, all right, I apologize. Well, and I did, I put this together over the past, wasn't, I didn't have time to make it what I like to present in a coherent and good looking document. So this document, I did work on, pretty much nonstop. the past
I try to
couple
get down
days.
to the bottom line.
Yeah, no, I understand. So when looking at sort of our revenue structure, outside of a tax increase, which we haven't done, in 20 years, you look at development, real property taxes, houses. That is a one big revenue booster for how Maryland municipalities are structured. Yeah, the other things are, the shared income tax, which when a resident moves in, we're not just getting their real property tax, but we're also getting a percentage of their income that they earn. So growth is a revenue driver for us. I think at the same time, there's cost to that as well, for residential versus business. So those are our two main revenue drivers would be real property tax and the shared income tax. And they are our two largest sources on a year-to-year basis towards our operating revenue.
Because I think as I'm going through the figures here, 142,000 is 1% increase in property tax.
1 cent, correct.
1 cent. And if we need 300 some thousand, then we need 3% increase in property taxes. 3 cents.
Little, yeah,
So that's pretty significant.
correct.
Yeah. So I need to study these figures more.
Okay.
Okay.
Moving
So
on.
we're on page 5, item 4, 457B match. The town, we don't currently offer a 457B match. If we were to offer, a 3% salary match for employees, general rule of thumb is once you offer a match, 35% of employees will contribute to it. Typically, those employees will do enough to reach that match. Using that general rule of thumb, it would be an approximately $50,000 increase to our operating budget. Now, I'm actually lost in my papers. Page 6 is the retirement contribution. Now, this is, Mayor James, what I mentioned earlier. I think, the hard thing about sort of where we're at with, our pension is that it's a requirement that all employees, once you join the town, you have to join the pension system. You have to pay that 7%. I do a lot of reading on municipal governments and talk to a lot of people. There is a movement of moving away from that defined benefit pension plan to, I know there's a police department down in Florida who has moved to just doing a fixed contribution to a 401A plan, which is basically a 401K. So I think since we are under those constraints of, the LEOPS is very, very costly, very, very costly to our operating budget. And we can't, deviate from the employees having to join the employee pension. I think we could maybe reach some middle ground of where we do offer a, retirement contribution to eligible employees in public works and the police departments who have a physically demanding job on a consistent basis. And if you coupled that with, offering a health insurance and retirement with a potential early option that's less sort of stringent than the 90-year eligibility rule that you have, and you were to offer, 457B match of 3% and a 4% retirement contribution to these individuals, I mean, that would be, 10% of their salary being put away each year. I just bring this as a thought for consideration. It's an idea I have of sort of going as a hybrid of a defined benefit plan and a defined contribution plan.
Okay. Do you have a question?
I do. So that was one of the things we talked about, finding a middle ground. Looking at what was appealing for LEOPS. I've seen this before. What does the illustration look like? I mean, I think, you can say that, but can you give us an illustration so that you compared, the retirement the retirement and then LEOPS. Can you do an illustration for LEOPS in this alternative that you're proposing?
Yeah, sure. I could.
I think it
definitely
would
show
make
that.
more sense. We would be able to understand it and visualize it. I think that's what needs to, we can see it better.
Okay.
Than the way you're describing it. And I know we talked about a middle ground, something that, and I did hear some of the officers say, it is not LEOPS or nothing. It's just something so that they're not beat up and can't enjoy retirement.
Absolutely.
So if we can see that, I think that would be a great thing to look at.
Are you thinking about like our competition, which is Charles County, St. Mary's County, Calvert, they're kind of the three, and then maybe pick something towards the District 2 to see how they would compare. Where are we going to lose our guys to? And we compete with them. That's the key thing.
And I agree with that, Councilman Goldsmith, but at the same time, you know, they're just much larger organizations than us and can do more. I think we need to be, you know, aware of that fact and think of it. So that's just, you know, a thought is that, you know, I know Director Stahl was beating me up about why didn't we put DC Water in the class and comp study. Even DC Water in an afternoon spends more money than the town of La Plata does in a year. So we need to be aware of that fact. We can't ultimately compete totally with these organizations. You know, I think one thing, and we always talk about it in finance, is having a good culture that makes people want to come back and work here. That's something we always try to promote, but I do understand.
I think the one thing the town of Plata has and different organizations is the working environment.
Right.
How, and what's it like to work here as compared to working in DC or some other organizations? And that has a value to it.
Right.
The bottom line is, I think we all agree that there needs to be an enhanced there needs to be a retirement and health benefits. Once, you know, you have someone that served 48 years with us and we gave them a pat on the back and said, thank you.
Right.
And there's nothing there. So that I am very curious about the enhancement for the public works and the police department with the physically demanding jobs. It may not be LEOPS or whatever else that Public Works may have, but it may be a step in the right direction. And that's what we're looking for. So I do like that option as well.
And the last two items, these were recommended. Item 6 was recommended in the class and comp study. It's an acceleration of vacation accruals. This is more for recruitment and retention of our early employees. If you look at our current vacation accrual schedule, less than 1 year of service, they're only getting 4 hours each month. So the idea is to sort of, you know, keep our higher level thresholds at the same, but accelerate just the schedule. Would move to less than 1 year of service, 7 hours each month, more than 1 year of service, 10 hours each month, and then more than 5 years of service, you would have 13 hours each month. The other item, this was not in the class and compensation study just because we did not want to waste a benefits question on bereavement leave. But currently the town doesn't offer any paid bereavement leave. And this was brought up in our organizational study questions with staff. I hear it from my staff. We just recommend that the town offers 3 days of paid bereavement leave for a death in the immediate family, which is pretty, I mean, I don't even think that's really a generous benefit. That just sort of is just a benefit I think we should do.
You know, one thing I can say about our employees here is they do go above and beyond and work very long hours. So to increase their vacation accruals, I am very much in favor of what you have recommended on that. Bereavement leave, to me, that's a no-brainer on that one as well. So I guess tonight we've got a couple things for a course of action here, and that I'm going to ask council to weigh in on and vote, I guess, is to do a salary adjustment to 65%, because we've got the budget coming up and we've got to get these numbers in. to put in the bereavement leave, the acceleration of the vacation as well. And then authorize the town to commission a vendor to develop a health and benefit plan and the 457 plan to look at that retirement contribution, which I am so adamant about because I think that's what our employees need and they want. So that's what I think we're looking at tonight. I'll open the floor for any comments, questions. Anything?
So you're saying that we're tonight making a decision that we are going to approve bereavement, the salary adjustment, the 65 thing, and what was the last one?
It was the bereavement, the acceleration of vacation,
Okay.
and then the 65% instead of the 50% that we normally, that we had.
Okay.
Yes.
What cost are we committing to?
So the only cost we'd be committing to is that $317,000 for
With
next
the-
fiscal year for that 65th.
Next fiscal year?
Yes. Bereavement leave, I would say that's immaterial to the
Minor.
budget, and even the vacation acceleration.
Those are minor.
Yes, it's not, I would not even change our budget for those adjustments.
Okay.
And I guess, these are the decisions. I mean, I need to present to you guys next Tuesday a balanced budget within a budget ordinance. So that, I do believe that the class and compensation study, it is complete. We have the numbers. So if you guys do want to move forward on a recommendation, we could include that in the budget.
Councilman Jenkins?
Thank you, Councilman Jenkins, Ward 4. Thanks for the work, and I get it. These are a lot of numbers. So I think in line with what Councilwoman Bryant Ward said earlier, and I think you just said it, for me, I would just like to see how does this fold into the budget? I mean, what's the, as Councilman Goldman said, what is the bottom line here? Because I do support the 65 percentile and the vacation accrual as well as the bereavement leave. And I would also look at some other options or some kind of a mixed package with respect to retirement. And I believe we said that the $317,000, which would fund the 65th percentile, that can be funded through some cuts in some of the ARPA programs. And I would just I want to clarify one thing, that this Charles Street thing, that was through the community foundation. It wasn't, right? I mean, that was I'm still a little
We have
bit.
a community foundation that we would,
So that would be cut.
that would be cut.
Okay.
And there's almost $20,000 in there now. And then it would be the streetscaping on Charles Street, where we are looking for alternative methods to fund that and cut that in half, and then cut the DCC in half.
Okay, because we got the bond.
We
right,
just
got the
received
bond on that.
500,000 on that. So I think it would bring a total
and-
of 1.1 million instead of 1.3 million.
And I'm okay with those suggestions, but I just want to go back and just, I guess, clarify and reinforce our efforts to work with our consultant, to work with State Highway, to still work on Charles Street
Oh,
improvements.
absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
I know this is a side issue, but I still want to make sure that we focus on that as well.
Yeah, and if I can add that, we are continuing through our K&K with the sort of more of the, I'll call it the paved surface
Right.
sidewalk approach, as opposed to the ARPA money, which was more associated with more of a beautification flavor, if you will, with benches, planters.
And that also includes, that's
Facade.
probably a separate item through our traffic consultant working on the signalized crossings or something. The
Crosswalk.
pedestrian, right.
Yes.
Again, I don't want to divert attention away from what we're talking about
Yeah,
tonight, but I
that
just
work
want to
will
make,
continue.
okay, thank you.
Councilwoman Bryant Ward?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, Mr. Greenville, we come back with an ordinance to make these adjustments. At what point are we going to talk about the visual for the actuarial for the police and public works? Would there be a separate ordinance that we would come back for if we find something, a happy ground with that?
So I think we would need to do two things. We would need to do a resolution to authorize us to engage in consulting services to help us develop the post-retirement benefit plan. And also, I think we should be able to find a vendor who can also help us in establishing a potential retirement contribution and a 457B match, and really vesting schedules, I think, is what we could get help with from there. I mean, we could pull standard ones. The second item would be, it probably would take at least, I want to say like 4 months potentially to get all this, to do work with the consultant, get everything done, get a new updated actuarial study. We could do a budget amendment to fund this at a later time. That would be a budget ordinance. But I don't think we're in a position right now to fund the FY23 budget with those benefit enhancements.
So we would be looking at FY24.
Or if, a budget amendment
Okay,
halfway through the year to sort of establish these and
Okay.
get that rolling.
okay.
So Councilwoman Bryant Ward, are you okay with the 65%, the bereavement leave and
Yeah,
the vacation?
absolutely.
Okay, and I heard you, Councilman Jenkins, Councilman Trollinger.
I'm okay with the 3 items presented and moving forward on those items. I want to be clear, it does not appear that we're taking LEOPS off the table tonight. We're investigating whether or not there is a different retirement opportunity for our town and our public safety employees that we need to do something about the 90-year rule. I mean, it's impossible to expect the folks that are working in public safety to uphold that or to retain people that are very central to our town. And I would suspect that, I'm not exactly sure how we came up with our return on investment on the town police department through these numbers, but I would suspect they would go very, very low if we're looking at requiring everybody to meet the 90 years and sticking around that whole time. We would probably have much lower, whatever numbers you have here. But I think with what Councilwoman Bryant Ward said is helpful in having a visual, just like we did on our tax increase, or not our increase, but the increase of utility spend. Just seeing what it practically looks like for town employees in different types of benefits, okay? Because it's one thing to see it abstractly in years of service, but to see it as what it actually will mean in retirement is much more helpful. Just as a comment, I think it's helpful that the town police department, that the town has brought forward LEOPS as being a benchmark as kind of from what I've seen, it's the only plan that's been put forth so far from the municipal perspective. A lot of different departments in the state have joined on, which I don't know if that's the reason why it's so much less than the last time it was brought up, almost half as much, or
That's purely looking at our current staffing levels and the buyback from them. So I think it has more to do with our current levels versus last year. I know we had some officers retire, a few left. So I think that does, when you get a new one on and it reduces that. So I don't think that's a reflection of the solvency of LEOPS.
Well, I know that other municipalities have joined on, and they are, LEOPS is a solid program, but as far as being it's LEOPS or nothing, I agree that it doesn't necessarily have to be that way, but it is something that we're using to gauge what is going to be helpful for our town and helpful for our employees moving forward. And, to date, that's what we've received. That's what we have to go by. So I'm looking forward to seeing what other opportunities there are. But I think minimizing that 90 requirement is going to be huge, because you just can't expect high-level employees to keep performing at that level and expect a 90-year requirement, or to retain people in that way. So, I don't, getting another actuarial study, I'm guessing is something we need to do. But, when I hear that, I hear, we're just keep moving it down the road, and we're going to be talking about this in 2 or 3 years. And I hope that's not the case. Because it seems like this is a conversation everybody's had for a very long time. So hopefully we can all get together and work on something that works for everybody so that we get some consistency for new employees and to retain some people that we need.
Thank you. Councilman Goldsmith.
Yeah, in the comment, we were looking at LEOPS initially, we first came on board here, and it kind of seemed like that was the plan. The only thing we really had to compare with was LEOPS. But there's a wealth of knowledge we have sitting over there of Chief Skinner. We have a new FOP now, it's been established, and they're obviously looking at things. They're obviously looking around other organizations that have something maybe even different than LEOPS, because the idea is it's not LEOPS or nothing now. There are other variations of it. Maybe get an input from them of what they're seeing out there, rather than us to have to do another study. Let's just see if they can give us some ideas and thoughts and where it's at. Is it working? What's the cost factor involved into it? And they could probably do that in a couple of weeks or so, could you not?
You can reach out to different chiefs and sheriffs throughout the state and see what they're doing. You know that a lot of municipalities are moving to LEOPS. Talked to the chief in Denton yesterday. Agencies are smaller than ours. They moved into LEOPS as a way to retain, but we are more than happy. I know the chief in Easton, they have a different plan. I don't know who the vendor, I don't know if it's MetLife or something like that. I'll gladly reach out and talk to every chief and sheriff I know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And are you okay with the 65%? The
Yes, I am.
bereavement leave in that? Okay, so it sounds like there is a consensus, the 65%, the bereavement leave, and funding that through cutting of those three identified ARPA funding, bereavement leave, and the acceleration of vacation, and authorizing you to commission somebody to look at enhancements for the health benefits and retirement and the 457B plan.
I guess how we would want to, I mean, if we're going to go out and do this, it's not really, I mean, I think we would want to have the intention of setting up a post employment health benefit program if we're going to move forward with this, because we're not going to be just commissioning an actuarial study. They need to do that to update the GASP 75 number. We'd be looking at them also to provide services on recommendations and setting this up. So I think it's not another actuarial study. I mean, I view this as the intention of council of wanting to move forward and establishing this. And if we're going to reach out and spend this money, I think that, you know, should be sort of the direction that we're given. It's not just another actuarial study. I mean, it's us establishing this and setting it up.
So it sounds like there's one more step before that step, is that what Councilwoman Brian Ward has asked is to see LEOPS and something, the enhanced benefits, what that would be before we, I guess, engage somebody to do a study. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay. And is that the will of the council to do that instead of?
And thanks for the clarification, because that was my final question or comment was, again, another actuarial. I mean, it just kind of like, how many of these things do we need to do to get this thing off first base?
It's exhausting.
I mean, it's not a criticism, it's just frankly a level of frustration. And
Right.
so that clarification helps.
Yeah. And
That we're going to, it's not really an actuarial, it's going to do a more detailed analysis for a retirement and contribution program.
So it's
Is
right
that-
there, and
Okay.
Jim doesn't see a lot of numbers. We're going to cut it
Yeah,
down. to
and I
little-
do,
We see it
Yeah.
comparison.
Side by side, and that's
Right.
what we need to do, because you do this for a living. You see numbers and you geek out over that. We get a little overwhelmed.
and I
Some
do
of us.
apologize. This is not my most polished presentation to you. So it was a
Well-
lot to get in and get done. So
We got the 3 items that we need to do for the budget for next week. And then you have marching orders to do a comparison when you're not sleeping, which I think you don't sleep much. So we appreciate all your hard work on this. And it is very important to our employees that we've heard this over and over again for a health benefit and retirement plan. And some of us are very fortunate that we don't have to worry about it because of government. But others are not. So that, you know, for military, I should say. So others are not. So this is very important for our employees. So thank you for that. I appreciate that.
and Mr. Greenville, thank you. I sit in your seat, so I do understand that it is a shoot the messenger because we don't understand. You know, it's not as cut and dry as slapping it together and not having a path forward for supporting it. So I certainly support you, and I appreciate all of your efforts. And polished or not, we got the message.
Thank you very much. All right, I think that brings us, if I can even find where we're at now, brings us to our next one, which is, the restructuring the legislative services. This should be a pretty cut and dry request.
Michelle will take this.
Michelle, you still on with us?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. With the departure of our Director of Legislative Services, Town Clerk, and recommendations recently from PayPoint HR, staff feels that this is a good time to realign the Legislative Services Department. So in doing so, based on the town's personnel policy manual, any substantial change in the classification plan can be amended accordingly, subject to the approval by the town council. So what we're requesting is the council give the town manager authorization to realign the legislative services department.
Thank you. Does any of the council have any questions or any objections to this request of authorizing the town manager to do that? Go ahead, Councilman Jenkins.
Ward 4, thanks for the effort because I think it's needed. I was just curious. I lost my notes here, but so this is trying to, under the title of community liaison, it has all these different functions, which I think is good. Maybe this is just a name title, or perhaps this could be included as part of an economic development function rather than quote community engagement, or maybe I'm just trying to wordsmith it. I'm just not quite sure. For me, it captures everything. I mean, I think it's good to remove and give the legislative folks to focus on those legislative issues that are important, but I guess I'm just still a little bit, I mean, we have Main Street, but what happens to the La Plata Town Center Corporation, and are we going to do full membership of Main Street program or not? And that requires a commitment. If we're going to do Main Street program, we have to commit a budget, and we have to commit a full, either part-time or full-time person to that to run it. So, and I've seen in other communities when we were looking at the Arts Council that, and I have examples where they, under Main Street program, they have all these functions under that umbrella. I think not Eastern, but I can find out for you. I forget. But anyway, what I'm saying, and I don't want to drag this out, but it just seems I support this, but I just wonder we ought to tweak it a little bit further. That's all.
And I think the main concern, and Brent, correct me if I'm wrong, is that we do not have a town clerk right now, which is
Right.
per our code,
Correct.
we need a town clerk.
Yes.
So if if council is amenable to this tonight, to give the town manager the authorization to realign the legislative services department, we will fulfill that and
Okay.
be in compliance, and then we can tweak out the.
Okay.
The
I get it.
everyone in agreement?
Sure.
All right. That we're all in agreement. Thank you very much.
Thank
All
you.
right, that brings us to Tillman Lake Engineering, Director Stahl. Director Stahl? Director Stahl? Are you talking during class? Come on now. All right, this is for the Tillman. Oh, my goodness, our Tillman.
First, we got MS4, Mayor James.
I think we're going to talk about.
MS4.
MS4 was first.
Yes.
Or did I
That is.
skip that one? Both of them.
That is first.
Presentation on MS4.
All right, MS4 first there.
Right. Okay, that's just part of it. That's fine. That's part. No, go ahead, Craig. Just go down. There is a PowerPoint as well. One of the things that we would do, and to be honest, I'm not going to sit here and bore you with all the details with respect to the state's report back. Every year in October, we have to file a report back to the state of Maryland as to our progress on MS4. And what I wanted to do was to take the presentation to kind of walk you through what we're doing and what MS4 is all about so that you understand exactly what MS4. We had done this presentation to the previous council, but I think it's important that you understand where we need to go and why we're spending the money that we have to do. So, Craig, were you able to find my PowerPoint? It looks like that.
The stormwater, this says
Yes, ma'am.
stormwater management.
Yep, Stormwater Management
So it's the
Program and
second-
Permit 2022.
It's the second link up under there, yeah.
Yep.
That,
Thank you. Can we go to the next slide, please? What happened, the legislature in 2007 actually enacted the Stormwater Management Act of 2007, and it forced the towns and the counties to comply through the stormwater management and to create a stormwater management ordinance to comply with the 2007 Act. In 2012, the town of La Plata actually created a stormwater utility, and we created a fee to be able to take over. And at the time, the council decided that we would take over the maintenance of all residential and town-owned stormwater management. We also are required by the state ordinance to take and inspect all stormwater management, ponds, facilities, etc. In 2008, we were now made part of the what they call the National Pollution Discharge Elimination System and the MS4 permit for such, which is the Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System. We are now under an MS4 permit, which we weren't before. So we do have an individual MS4 permit, and there are specific requirements of going through compliance every year. If I could go to the next slide. And some of the things that we're doing, and we're working on projects all the time. You've seen all of the projects around that we have done. We're constantly working with contractors to do construction inspection. We are working on emergency repairs. That repair right there was the repair out at Redwood Lake. Next slide, please. Infrastructure maintenance. As you can see, that's the one pipe that was under 301 where we had the separation in the pipes. This other one was when we replaced the pipe at St. Mary's Avenue. We had to put in a retaining wall down at the wastewater treatment plant where it had eroded out down there at the storm. So we have been undertaking numerous projects. Redwood Lake was another good example of a project that we've undertaken. Next slide, please. Now, part of phase 2 of our permit required items that we would do and would be conducted by the town, but we need to expand those. Funding was clearly going to be needed for a lot of these projects, and the council was kind enough to allocate some of the ARPA monies, and we've allocated $2 million towards some of our stormwater compliance. The projects that we're doing as far as the stormwater compliance aren't optional, they're mandatory, and they've been mandated as part of our MS4 permit. And we'll walk through some of the requirements for MS4. Next slide, please. The first requirement is actually personnel education and outreach. We've gone through and done training with our employees. We've done newsletter articles. We're distributing educational materials to people throughout the community. So outreach to our community is actually part of what we have to do for our permit. Number 2, next slide, please. We have a requirement for public involvement and participation. So we have to go and do surveys, program feedback, And we clearly, one of the things that we really need to expand that part of the program. We need to do a better job of educating the public. It's not just always a matter of what we do, but educating the public as to why we do. Next slide, please. One of the things that we're working on is we have to enact an illicit discharge detection and elimination ordinance. So we're going to actually have to enact legislation here in town to deal with illicit discharge detection and elimination. Part of that was actually, we already started that when we passed our grease ordinance, which is banning that from going into our sewer system. But now we have to actually create an ordinance that creates a violation for people who are doing illicit discharge into our storm system. Next slide, please. We also have to deal with construction site stormwater runoff. One of the things we've done now is we actually have Soil Conservation District approving not only our sediment erosion control plans, but we also have to have them are doing approval for our stormwater management plans as well. So it's not just sediment erosion control, but it's actually stormwater management. And MDE, still Maryland Department of the Environment, still has authority to do all of the inspections and enforcement in the town of La Plata. We have never taken that over, and MDE still does that. We enforce the stormwater laws, they enforce the sediment and erosion control laws. Next slide, please. Minimum controls for post-construction stormwater management. All of our sites in town actually have to have post-construction stormwater management. So you will see when you hear MEP, the maximum extent possible, when you say what's the term? Goodness, sorry, it just slipped my mind. What is it?
That's it.
Yeah, ESD, environmental site design to the maximum extent possible. So, and I just went out of my head. Apologize. But we're working with all of our contractors to develop sites that do maximize the environmental site design to maintain stormwater management for the long term. We had a situation today where the stormwater management facility up at Rosewick Crossing at the shopping center up across from the Giant, a huge sinkhole opened up in their stormwater management facility. It's kind of the same thing we've been doing. They're having to go up and fix the site because this is a site that's actually commercial. So it's not taken over by the town of La Plata. It was a commercial facility, and it's actually part of their stormwater management device that they put in for the long term. It's one of the large pipes, and so it opened up a very large hole up in the parking lot. And it's something that the Phillips Edison, will actually have to fix because it's not covered under something that the town would take over in this situation. We are working with our staff on the stormwater facility design and maintenance and what we have to do. And as you know, we're in here constantly trying to maintain facilities, maintain what we have out there, and to keep the existing infrastructure that we have well maintained, as well as maintaining all of the new that's getting added in. The sixth control, please, next slide. We have to do pollution prevention and good housekeeping. And we have to require that for others in the town. We actually have a pollution prevention plan at the wastewater treatment plant, and they come down and regularly inspect us from the state to ensure that we're maintaining the plant as it should be. And then the final part of this, and that's the next slide. The watershed implementation plan, which is really the seventh control factor that we have to do. Each person who holds an MS4 permit has to take, as part of their phase one, has to treat 20% of the impervious surface to current standards of that which they consider untreated. So in the town of La Plata, we have approximately 750 impervious surface acres that are considered untreated at this point. They're not up to the modern stormwater management standards. And when we went back and we worked with our consultant and with the state, it was determined that the town had to go out and treat 123 impervious acres and bring that up to the new ESD standards. In order to do that, we worked with our consultant who was Soltez at the time, and we found that there were 4 ponds that would be necessary to upgrade in order to treat the 123 impervious acres in the town. And those ponds were the pond at just before the intersection on Quailwood Parkway, just before the intersection of Mallard Lane over in the woods. The 2 ponds at Agricopia and the pond at Redwood Circle. And of course, we were trying to grab the biggest bang for the buck. So we went after those ponds to start with because we could get the most acres and do those in 4 specific projects. So the $2 million that you see allocated in the ARPA funding were not for, and what you can find is that when we put that in that last slide, and I left that last sign in there, it says require reevaluation of our stormwater maintenance fee and whoops. Can we go back for a second, Craig? One slide. Require reevaluating our stormwater management maintenance fee and possibly adding a WIP fee. And what we were talking about when we created this, when we put this together the first time, we had our stormwater management fee that we currently have, which was for maintenance of the existing system. But we had the full intention that as the new WIP implementation came around and we had to modify all these existing structures, that we would implement another fee, a WIP fee, to literally pay for those implementations. One of the real positives with having ARPA was that we hope to be able to fund all of those projects with that money and therefore not have to implement a WIP fee to our customers. And we think that's a very, very positive piece. And the reason I wanted to bring that was just specifically for that reason, because the 4 projects that we're going to implement here, I will be bringing those design costs to you very soon, because we're having to do the same thing that you see here coming to you for Tillman Lake. Tillman Lake is not part of that, and we're trying, as part of this H&H study that we bring to you tonight, we're hopeful that we could get some credit for the revisions that we can do at Tillman Lake to be able to get some credit. But we're going to also be bringing 4 engineering projects forward for the MS4 permit, and hopefully we will be able to implement those in the next year. All of these WIP implementation plan has to be accomplished by the end of 2024. So we are in a bit of a hurry now. We had time, but time is running out. We did get the funding. And so over the next 2 years, we have to work very, very diligently to get these 4 projects implemented. So we're looking forward to that. Next slide, please. And in summary, we're doing many things. A lot of the public part of this, we work very hard every year on the implementation report. You saw the letter. We did put the letter in the file that we got back from the state. We work very closely with the state stormwater management folks, Michelle Crawford and Debbie Capacetti. We talk to them a lot, because there's a real coordination between MDE and the town of La Plata and the implementation of this. And so we really have a lot of cross-departmental work together on that. And we're going to have to constantly work in the future once this first phase, and this is what I tell everyone, this is just phase one. Phase two, the full intention is that we would have to do another 20%. And then phase three, we'll have to do another 20%. And so over a 25-year period, the idea was that all of the stormwater management would be upgraded to the current standards for stormwater management. And it may change with time so that those standards may be upgraded, but the idea here was that every year, each governmental entity had to take 20% of its impervious surface and treat up to current standards. So we're working on that. We're working very diligently on that. We're going to need your help. Certainly the funding from ARPA has been very helpful in trying to do this first phase of it. But you're going to constantly hear about it. You're going to constantly hear about MS4 and where this is moving forward. And with that, I'll turn it back for questions. I'm happy to.
Thank you very much. So you're just making us aware of this and
Absolutely.
and the impending costs that it has. And it is a good thing that we do have some ARPA funding that is set aside for this. That will help out immensely. So thank you for this presentation. Council, do we have any questions or comments? Councilman Jenkins?
Madam Mayor, just Councilman Jenkins, for a comment. First of all, I know you guys and staff are working very hard, so thank you for that effort. I know you're constantly like almost putting Band-Aid on stuff, so thank you. Your comment earlier about, public education, and I would totally support that. And just for future reference or thinking about, perhaps there's a way to do videos or YouTube videos or something, or do interviews where you could, interview you or your staff and tell why stormwater manager. I think it's just part of a broader program for us to tell our story and what the staff does, so the citizens know that you're out there working hard on these kind of issues. And then that would also have us an opportunity to really leverage what our PIO officer does. I mean, if we have one, then we ought to use them.
And you might have him on your podcast.
That's not, well, I wasn't going to say that,
Well,
but,
there you go. I did.
but because I have one planned that I'll talk to you about. But so I would just commend you guys again for great work. I know it's not easy.
It is difficult. The guys are out there working hard every day to do projects, and we do have a very limited staff. And to be honest, it is a difficult task to constantly try to balance all of the needs and be the director, but also, make sure that we're doing the wastewater treatment plant upgrades and the water upgrades and all of the different projects that we have going on with a very small staff. And it is challenging. We're contracting out a lot of the work, but you also have to manage the contractors. And so, it's also a matter of, reviewing the designs and making sure that the designs are going to work, and then how we bid that out and how we implement it. So we're able to do it, and we're trying the best. And I think the state understands that, the town of La Plata is working hard on it. We don't miss our compliance deadlines. And I hope that we continue to be able to do that.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? All right. I know that you're going to be busy in Kings Grant as well now that the dedications have gone through. So that is, you have job security for sure. Never a dull moment. All right. Now we go on to Tillman Lake Dam.
Thank you. Mayor, what I bring before you tonight, I guess I need to just explain, out of the clear blue in November of 2020, the state dam safety people came down and made an inspection at Tillman Lake. Tillman Lake was created by the Army Corps of Engineers back in the 40s. They consider, the dam safety people say in their letter that you can certainly see, and it's been part of the package that you received, that this wasn't an engineered dam and this was just put in. Well, it was put in by the Army Corps of Engineers as part of an Army project, and that lake was the actual recreation center for the Army facility that was the radio station for many years. And a lot of people, my good friend Ed Gorham, took swimming lessons over there when he was a kid. So it's clearly been utilized. The town of La Plata, once we received the letter back from Dam Safety, contracted with Soltez to take a look at a basic study to kind of tell us what direction we needed to go on. They came back and, of course, concurred with the state and told us the parameters for the H&H study that we need to have done. We were initially, and part of state procurement allows for professional services, as you know, that you can select your vendor based on qualifications and then negotiate price. We didn't feel extremely comfortable with that because the prices have been coming back in fairly high, so we have been shopping some of it around. And in this case, we did decide to do that. So we went out and asked other vendors to quote this. And so we now have 3 bids, one from Coastal Resources, one from Soltez and Barton Logedice and Macron. And the 3 bids came back as you can see them on my memo. And what I bring before you tonight is to ask for your approval of the $78,587.58 bid from Coastal Resources to do an H&H study. And we will bring a resolution forward next week that would allow the town manager to sign that contract with Coastal Resources. That's what this is about tonight, but it's also about to bring you the information that we're trying to comply with the state's requirement to do this at the lake. This ultimately will be part of the stormwater upgrades, and we will have to do repairs at the lake. And the assumption is that that could entail some significant repairs there at the lake.
Have you worked with this company before?
We have not. They're a very reputable company. I know Melinda actually worked with them on the Wilson Bridge project. They did a lot of environmental work on the Wilson Bridge project. They're not they weren't a company that I'm not unfamiliar with them. I'm familiar with them. And to be honest, it's been interesting because so many of the local firms down here are kind of, there really aren't too many. Ben Dyer is actually leaving La Plata. Of course, most of the older companies, D.H. Steffens does not do a tremendous amount of this specific kind of work here, but there just aren't a lot of engineering contractors, and they're all kind of getting folding into the larger and larger contractors, and just trying to find people who will work with us is a challenge.
That is a challenge now. All right, council, any questions? Go ahead, Councilman Jenkins.
Councilman Jenkins, Ward 4, thanks for this again. Is there a requirement that if we select, or your recommendation that they have to have a PE on staff? Because I read the letter, so they have to qualify.
PE on staff.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
absolutely.
All right.
All right. If council is okay with going with the company that Director Stahl has, the Coastal Resources, then I will take a vote.
So I just had a question. So you worked with Macron a lot on a lot
We
of our
have.
projects, and they're $88,000, right? The 93 minus the 5,000.
That was, they have to add $5,000. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
it says-
It says minus, but that's
That's
actually,
That's a Tilly,
the Barton Logedice, Macron doesn't do the hydrology studies, but they will actually come out and do some of the basic engineering on the project and do the plans. So they had about $5,000 in additional cost to Macron. To be honest, they weren't really interested. They were doing it really for the town of La Plata. They were willing to take this on and hire a sub-consultant, but they came in higher. And I think that, you know, to be honest, my recommendation is that I think Coastal Resources does this. And, you know, from my own personal standpoint, I believe Macron does a very good job. They specialize in water and sewer, but they didn't specialize in dam safety, and that's why they partnered with somebody else. But they're high, and I'm sorry. We have. I wouldn't say specifically, but I do think that, you know, I think that this was one where we're asking for a very specific job. There's very specific things that have to be done. And I couldn't really see a reason to pick a higher priced vendor in this situation. And I think it's worth saving the money in this case.
All right, so I'm looking for a consensus. Councilman Trolinger, do you have a question?
Yes, just very briefly, Director Stahl, thank you for your presentation. Based on the November 2020 letter, are we on track? Are we on schedule? Or are we behind schedule here?
Well,
Seems like we're behind.
Yes, we're a little bit behind. Certainly COVID played as soon as we actually got this letter. It was right at about Christmas. You remember, Brent? We literally got it right at Christmas, and right after Christmas was when COVID hit. MDE, by the time we were actually starting to work on this, MDE had already gone to remote work for everyone. Everybody wasn't working. And to be honest, you know, they're so far behind in their stuff that we're not really, as far as they're concerned, in violation of anything. We are working on these studies. We did initiate the initial study with Soltez, and so we have met some of the criteria. There are clearly going to be some things, but we need to work on a full set of engineering plans. And it's, you know, and to be honest, if it requires infrastructure, it may take some very serious lead times that we just can't do anything about right now.
Well, are we going to be able to get an extension? Because they have pretty clear deadlines within the letter on certain aspects of their recommendations. So, I mean, once the report's done, I mean, are we able to get extensions for that? Or
Absolutely. They have no choice but to extend the situation. I mean, to be honest, we've worked with them. They wanted us to drain the lake. And I said, you know, that just wasn't something that we wanted to consider. I don't see any problem with any type of extension. What I want to put in front of them is a set of plans and say, here's our plan to move forward. Of course, they'll have to give us a permit, and we would have a permit to work with in that situation. But there's nothing better to go in. If we're just going in and asking for an extension of time without anything to move forward, then I think that's, you know, not exactly the better way. I think the better way is to take a set of plans, have a set of plans, and as September moves forward, we move into this and say, look, here's our set of plans, give us a permit and let us get started. We have a funding source. Let's move. And that's, I mean, that's my hope in this. And I don't think, I haven't had any discussions with them where they felt that we weren't carrying for it on our end of the deal.
okay.
All right, so I'm looking for a consensus of having Director Stahl enter into a contract with Coastal Resources. They'll bring it to us next week for a resolution. Is that correct? Good, good. All right.
I'm good.
Got,
Thank you.
we've got it.
Thank you.
Moving forward. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, next is Community Foundation donation history. I think that is self-explanatory. If you have any questions, moving on. Good.
I had a quick
Leslie?
question, if you don't mind. Sorry about that.
You know, I love you, Dave.
What was the source of the funds that we distributed? I mean, are they town from the town budget?
Yes.
Okay, and then these various grants or donations, whatever these programs, was there an application process with a
Yes.
checklist, and then were there follow-up matrix and things that they had to follow so we could track it, how they use the money, or is that being too formal?
I don't believe in Brent, I don't know if Michelle is still on. Yeah, she is. Michelle, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't believe that there was a follow-up, but one of the questions I did ask is I said, was anybody ever denied? And during this process, and there have been denials because they didn't meet the criteria, but not denying because they met the criteria and they were denied. So that's the funding. And there's, as it says in the memo, almost 18,000 right now still in the coffers.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good. Now we'll move on to the next item. You know, I'm giving you a hard time. Now we're getting punchy. All right. Amendment DRRA for introduction. That would be you, Mr. Manuel.
Yes, Madam Mayor, Town Council, an ordinance concerning Article 10 of Chapter 173, Development Right and Responsibilities Agreements of the Town of La Plata, for the purpose of repealing Article 10 of Chapter 173, Development Rights and Responsibilities Agreement.
All right, it's just for introduction, so we shall see that again next week. Amendment for personnel 5.2.
Yes, Madam Mayor, Town Council, an ordinance concerning town personnel system for the purpose of amending the paid holiday schedule in the town's personnel manual and all matters generally relating thereto.
Again, an introduction that is making it a permanent part of our policy manual, a permanent holiday. Annexation 10411 La Plata Road.
Yes, Madam Mayor, Town Council, for introduction, a resolution concerning 10411 La Plata Road annexation, 2.3 acres, for the purpose of authorizing the annexation of 2.3 acres more or less of land into the corporate limits of the town of La Plata by amending the corporate limits of the town, establishing certain terms, conditions, and circumstances applicable to such land and to the owners thereof, providing for the zoning of such land upon annexation and all matters relating to the annexation of such 2.30 acres of land, more or less, into the town of La Plata.
All right, piggybacking on that one, the annexation plan for 10411 La Plata Road.
Yes, Madam Mayor, Town Council, a resolution concerning 10411 La Plata Road annexation, 2.3 acres, for the purpose of approving an annexation plan for the annexation of 2.30 acres, more or less, of land into the corporate limits of the town of La Plata in all matters relating to a plan for annexation of such 2.30 acres of land, more or less, into the town of La Plata.
You're doing really well there.
I'm
The
trying.
next one is the hub annexation for introduction.
Yes, Madam Mayor, Town Council, a resolution concerning the hub annexation for the purpose of authorizing the annexation of 306.5994 acres, more or less, of land into the corporate limits of the town of La Plata by amending the corporate limits of the town, establishing certain terms, conditions, and circumstances applicable to such land and to the owners thereof, providing for zoning of such land upon annexation and all matters relating to the annexation of such 306.5994 acres of land, more or less, into the town of La Plata.
And then we'll go with 5.6 with the hub annexation plan for introduction.
Madam Mayor and Town Council, a resolution concerning the hub annexation plan for the purpose of approving an annexation plan for the annexation of 306.5994 acres, more or less, of land into the corporate limits of the town of La Plata, and all matters relating to a plan for annexation of such 306.5994 acres of land, more or less, into the town of La Plata.
Fantastic. Well, that does it for our resolutions and introductions. And just one thing before we go on to the next one. I know next week is going to be a busy week with our resolutions and our public hearing for the hub. And we need to keep in mind that what we're looking for when we are looking at the annexations is we're looking at their zoning requirement, as well as if we would like them to be part of our family, part of our town. So that's what we're looking at, not necessarily the project that is coming in, although that is always helpful, but that we'll get to chomp on a little bit later with a master site development plan. So when you're looking, and it was a hot topic today in other areas of the town. So when you're looking at that next week and when you're doing your homework, which you guys are so awesome at doing, just make sure you're looking at whether the TDX is in compliance with the comprehensive plan. That's our focus there. Then we can look at the project and add our input afterwards. Okay. All right. That was a little break for you there. All right, Brent, you're back. A lease agreement.
Yes, Madam Mayor, Town Council, you have before you as an attachment to this, the lease agreement that's been negotiated between the Wills Group and Town of La Plata. If the council finds the terms of the lease agreement acceptable, staff would request that the council authorize the town manager to enter into said lease agreement on behalf of the Town of La Plata.
First of all, I have to commend you and the attorney for going back and forth and really looking into this lease agreement, and the input from our council was really very, very on point. So I am going to open it up to council if you have any comments. Otherwise, we need to take a vote on this, right, Brent? Yeah, we need to take a vote to allow the town manager to enter into this contract. Right? Any comments? Let's go for a
What I
vote.
could read, we got everything we asked for.
That's exactly right. I love that. Love
And
that.
then obviously we could move quickly then for the study to look at fit out.
All right. I will do, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Madam Mayor,
Aye.
I don't think we have a motion or a second on the floor.
Well, you know what? I'm a little bit tired. I'm so excited. This has been so long. All right. Rewind. Do I have a motion to accept the contract as presented?
So moved.
All right, thank you. Do I have a second?
Second, Madam Mayor.
All right. Discussion. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Let's get this. Yes. There we go. All right, we've got some future work session topics, as if we're never at a loss of words, right? What do we got going on?
Yes, Madam Mayor, we hope to get these back to you. I guess we have, is June the next month? Seems
I
like.
don't even know.
Yeah, we have
anymore.
one work session, I believe, scheduled for June 6th. So some of the items that we plan to bring before you would be a discussion on the defunct HOAs around town and see if there's a path to sort of maybe facilitate them and trying to get started back up, at least the HOAs that have an interest in doing such. I believe we do have some interest from some various neighborhoods, but just not sure what part of the process to move next. So maybe we can provide some sort of best practices and even assistance with them in doing that. The purple pipe, of course, we talked about, Councilman Jenkins. As of last meeting, I think Director Stahl is prepared to give a presentation on the purple pipe, as well as Kent Square parking, which relates back to a field trip some of us have taken down to the neighborhood and looking at expanding some of the parking in a interior island area that's currently grassed. And then, of course, the strategic plan. We need to revisit that. We need to look at familiarize ourselves with that newly created document and start monitoring it as we go through our calendar.
All right, fantastic. It looks like we have some things to look forward to. That brings us to our public forum. If anybody would like to speak either here or they are online, I ask that you state your name, your address, and whether you live in the incorporated town limits. And please try to limit your comments to 3 minutes. Do I have anybody who would like to speak this evening?
Madam Mayor, no one present has signed up to speak, and no one online has requested to speak either.
Okay. Then before we close, I would just like to say that you all have heard about the tragedy in Buffalo, a horrible thing that happened. Our hearts go out to all those who lost their lives in Buffalo and all those affected by this devastating tragedy. So just please keep them in your thoughts and hope that community heals. With that, I will have a motion to adjourn.
I move the adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Oh, my word.
No.
All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Good job, everyone.
Recording has stopped.
Hey, look at that improvement.